at the IRS. Now, one of the things we try to do on our show is to remember that what happens inside the Washington Beltway never resembles what's going on in the rest of the country. So in order to make sure that we get fresh input and fresh perspective, we like to talk to people who are talking to the people. We want to know what real, honest, hard-working Americans are saying, and today we check in with one of our America's Voices, McGraw-Milhaven of St. Louis talk radio station KTRS. McGraw, good to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Brian, always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, look, a lot of money is being spent. I said earlier that we're spending money in this town like drunken sailors, and I don't want to offend any drunken sailors who generally are pretty good people. But are your people talking about that when you get on your talk radio show program?
Yeah, they are. And in St. Louis and in a lot of the Midwest, there's a general sense that the system just isn't working. It's working for the rich and the connected, but for the poor schlep who goes to work every day, pays his bills, doesn't overspend, that system is breaking down. There is a large disconnect between the Tom Dashells of the world, the John Thanes of the world, the Bernie Madoffs of the world, and the rest of us.
Well, we actually have some samples from your program, some little sound bites, some little clips of what people are saying. Let's hear what Bob had to say, called in to talk about housing.
Last year, we found her dream house in Webster.
Okay.
It would have been a stretch. It's an $800,000 home.
Right.
So the fact that we didn't want to go stretch, we didn't buy the house.
Right.
Now it's going to hurt us because you know what? We could have got the bailout.
There are people who are very irritated that people who made bad decisions about how much money they could afford for a house are sort of now going to get bailed out on the backs of people who made good decisions.
No question, Brian. And in fact, did that person do the right thing and not stretch? But now that the home prices are going to be artificially inflated, the person who could buy the $100,000 house but can't buy the $150,000 house, they're on the outside looking in. So if you own a home, great. But you know what? If you did the right thing and rent to save up, guess what? You're on the outside looking in now.
Let's try to hear what Chuck had to say. Chuck called your show, and he wanted to talk about the situation with the banks.
You give Wall Street a bunch of cheap, easy money. How do you make money? You lower your rates, you lower your guidelines. We don't even have to hold them. We'll sell them. Nothing will come back to haunt us. But it's so intertwined, it did. But sometimes the chickens come home to roost, and that's where we're at now, and it just keeps getting worse.
People are irritated about the bank bailout. They feel like the banks, maybe some of them feel like the banks should have been allowed to fail because they didn't operate properly.
Yeah, that's true. There is a lot of that. But there's also something else, Brian, going on, and that is the fact that there are some big banks that are in trouble, whether it's Citibank, Bank of America, but there are many, 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 many regional, smaller banks in the Midwest that are doing just fine, didn't overspend, didn't play fast and loose with the rules. They're all going about their business, still loaning money. Those stories never get reported. The big 2 or 3 bad banks, oh, the banking system is awful. But in the Midwest, there are many, many banks that are doing just fine.
All right, here's a question for you. What is it that's going on in the Midwest? What do people there think about what's happening in Washington? What is the main difference between the people in Washington who are making the laws and the people that you talk to every day on your radio show?
I truly think, Brian, that there is a total disconnect, more than I've ever seen before, and that is these people who are in Washington, who are passing the laws, who are making the bills, are throwing mud at each other, and they're missing the whole story. They're both trying to make the other side look bad. But the truth is, there's a genuine feeling that the system is breaking down and is not working for the guy who pays his bills, pays his taxes, goes to school, does all the right things you're supposed to do. There's a feeling that the system is breaking down. If I went into a bank and robbed a bank, I would be in jail. Yet Bernie Madoff sits in his luxury apartment and he stole $17 billion. He's connected. The rest of us aren't.
Well, if there's a God in heaven, maybe he won't be there much longer. McGraw-Milhaven, thank you so much for joining us.
Brian.